Perhaps this is exactly why you don't want to go to war with the nation of Israel. Welcome back to the 511 show, and it's very, very interesting, this story that has gone under the radar in certain parts of the world, but I think this is a very, very relevant story to a lot of the things that is happening in the world, particularly how it pertains to the nation of Israel and its enemies. Now, we live in a time period where there are so many people, even in the Christian community, who want to convince you that the nation of Israel that exists today is not the Israel in the Bible, that it was something that, I don't know, Darby or the Rothschilds cooked up, and the Schofield Bible, blah, 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 dispensationalism, whatever the case you want to blame on the current nation state of Israel. As a result of that lie, so many people find it fair to make themselves enemies of the nation of Israel. Now, it's kind of weird when you talk about biblical prophecy. There are a multitude of books in the Bible that talk about a time period where all of the nations in the world will one day come to war against the nation of Israel. And you think to yourself, what could be the one way to get someone, an aloof, if you want to call it that, to stand on the battlefield one day in Jerusalem to go to war against God? Oh, I got it. You convince them that, well, the Israel that exists today is not the Israel of the Bible. And a lot of people have foolishly really have bought into that narrative. And there are a lot of people who have their own reasons for wanting to go to war with Israel and wanting to wipe Israel off of the map. And that kind of leads us to this story here. So let's rewind here a few months ago. This has been going on for much longer than the last calendar year, but things kind of escalated over the course of the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months. It wasn't that long ago where Israel made another declarative statement that they wanted to essentially wipe Israel off the map. And there are a lot of Muslim nations in the Middle East that have made it kind of their mission to not only just defeat Israel, but wipe Israel off of the map. Now, I have a multitude of reasons why I believe that is here, but let's just focus on the context of this little video here. This was about 6 months ago where Iran decided that they were going to fire off a multitude of ballistic missiles over in Israel. I think this was in Tel Aviv, more specifically here. And this is kind of the actions from the nation of Iran that is supported by a lot of the Islamic world, and for being honest with you, maybe a little bit of the Western world too. I mean, it's not just a Islamic motivation to wipe Israel off the map anymore. You're seeing people on the political left wing here in the United States of America who absolutely hate and despise Israel, who want them to essentially be thrown away because they're committing quote-unquote genocide. Then you got people on the right who are also just as anti-Israel as they are. People like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and a multitude of others here. But here's what was happening just a few months back, which is very relevant to the story that we're dealing with right now. So, there's people out there who want to convince you that there's no spiritual protection over the nation of Israel that exists today because, well, they don't actually believe in Jesus. Those aren't God's people. God's people are the church. God's people are the Christians. There are some people who are so deluded, they think that God's people are people like Nick Fuentes and Ian Carroll and Candace. Those are God's people? You sure about that? Because I don't think so. Long story short, you really should not make yourself an enemy of the nation of Israel and the Jewish people for that matter, because there is a significant price to pay for doing so. And Iran is finding out that lesson the hard way right now as they are suffering through an unprecedented drought and a water crisis. I've heard from some sources here that they're probably looking at maybe 2 weeks left of water reserve that they have left until they have to start doing emergency evacuations in some major cities in Iran, because literally they're not going to be able to live there pretty soon here. And like I said, very, very interesting story that's going under the radar here, but this is from the BBC. We'll talk about this story here first. Iran's unprecedented water drought is as the water crisis hits Tehran. Now, Tehran has been the home of a lot of Islamic terrorist attacks over the last several years. It's the capital of Iran, but it says here that they're facing an unprecedented drought this autumn with rainfall at record lows and reservoirs near empty. Officials are pleading with citizens to conserve water as the crisis deepens. The president of Iran, who we'll get to here in a second, has warned that there's not enough rainfall soon. Tehran's water supply could be rationed. He said that even rationing may not be enough to prevent disaster. Very, very interesting. He says here that rationing doesn't work. We may have to evacuate Tehran. His comments further prompted criticism of Iran's newspaper on social media. He says here that he called the idea of a joke. This is evacuating Tehran makes no sense at all. Well, if what he's saying here is true, you're rapidly running out of water, it may not want to be the place that you want to see yourself. And apparently the meteorologist over in Iran says that they're not expecting any more water rainfall in that region for another 10 days. At least another 10 days. So this is a situation that's effectively getting worse as time moves on here. Now, you think to yourself, okay, so what's the biblical ramifications of this story? What exactly is happening here? Well, we find that in one particular verse, maybe a couple of particular verses here. Let's jump over to the book of Zechariah, shall we? Well, let's look at the book of Zechariah here for a second. And it says here that it comes to pass that everyone who's left from the nations which came against Jerusalem shall come up year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, this is a time frame immediately after the tribulation, once the Antichrist and the false prophet has been defeated. We'll get to that here in a second. But it says here, if we jump down to verse 17, it says, and it shall be it shall be whoever of the families of the earth do not come to Jerusalem to worship the King of hosts and the Lord of hosts, it will have no rain. It will be the family of Egypt will come up and enter. If they not come up and enter, they shall have no rain. They shall receive the plagues which the Lord has strike the nations that do not come up and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So it says here very, very clearly that a lack of rain is a punishment, a divine punishment from God on nations who are, let's just say, disobedient to the Lord. And I think it's pretty safe to say that a nation like Iran is very, very disobedient to the Lord, because they're literally trying to wipe out his nation and his people, which isn't going to happen as much as they try. But let's take a deeper look into this whole situation here, because you're going to find something very, very interesting happening along these lines here. So it says here, just as we read earlier, Tehran is looking at the possibility of evacuation of their city as the water supply reaches near zero, and the city is apparently sinking into the desert. It's kind of a crazy story to think about, the entire city sinking into the desert here. But as you can see here in Iran, so many supporters there chant death to America, death to Israel. They all want to see the United States and Israel completely wiped off of the map. And, well, it says here, even in the article here, Deuteronomy 11:17, then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, that he will shut you up, he will shut up the heavens, and it says there will be no rain, the land will yield no fruit, and you will perish quickly on the good land that the Lord has given you. So again, we're showing you again that, you know, when a place doesn't get no rainfall and then crops start to die and people start to, you know, die of dehydration and all kinds of other things, a pretty nasty plague, no water. And we're seeing it here from a nation that just a few months ago was saying, hey, we're going to destroy Israel, death to Israel. Then the next thing you know, it's just like, oh no.
Oh no. What happened? Oh no, how terrible. That's just awful. How terrible. Oh no.
So it says here, the vital lifeline of Iran, which holds over 160,000 acre feet, now languishes about 8% capacity, which is essentially a 2-week supply of water for Tehran. And in terms of its reservoir, it isn't huge. It's about the size of the Canyon Dam in Texas. There's a few other comparisons here in the United States of America. Let's put it to you this way. In a couple of weeks, if things don't get better for the nation of Iran, they could be looking at a very, very nasty situation. And no, honestly, it may just be their own fault, the reason why they're in this situation to begin with. But no, plop down in the middle of the desert, make your nation's capital. A lot of your agriculture is dependent on water, and the significance of it all is that, hey, look, now all of a sudden you don't have any water. It's almost as if there was a critical design flaw with the foundation of your nation here. But as you see here, there's other people talking about the water crisis. A swimmer filmed the video where he showed that it's possible you could walk over the water reservoir right now, which shows you that it's very, very bad at the moment. Now, Iran is quote-unquote drought prone, but like I said, this is the most severe drought that they've had in nearly 60 years, and this is why they're saying that this is currently an unprecedented time period. Especially with the growing number of Iran's population, to not have water at a time like this is actually detrimental to Iran's nation. And like I said, we don't know exactly where this is going to end up, but this is not an Iran problem. It is going to get worse before it gets better here. And I'm just going to go ahead and out here and say it. I think that this is a divine judgment against God. I mean, not against God, but by God. I think God is literally cursing the nation of Iran right now because they've been so committed to the death and destruction of Israel, to the death and destruction of the Jewish people. It's kind of their entire shtick, if you wanted to call it that. That, you know, now they're reaping what they sow. They're seeing the sow of their own destruction, essentially. They've been so consumed with destroying Israel that now they're looking at the barrel of their own destruction if things don't change rather rapidly. So this is a topic I would definitely keep an eye on here over the next couple of weeks, because it definitely seems like it's going to get a lot worse. But I would just go ahead and kind of use this as a platform here. Do not fool yourself into thinking that the nation of Israel that exists today is somehow not still God's nation after thousands upon thousands of years. Because that foolish thinking that, you know, essentially, well, you know, it's not really the Israel of the Bible, so that there's no potential risk of going to waging war against them and against their people. Like I said, we are rapidly knocking on the door of a time frame that has been warned about for 2,500 years, and many people have completely ignored it because, let's be honest, they don't believe in God themselves. They don't believe in the Bible. They think that this is all hocus pocus and fairy tales. They're going to find out very, very quickly that it's not hocus pocus and fairy tales. And all I have to say about that is that you do not want to be on the enemy of, let's be honest, you don't want to be an enemy of God. You don't want to be an enemy of Christ when this goes down, because you want to talk about things that happen to the enemies of God, go read Zechariah. Go read Zechariah 12 and 14 and read about the horrific things that happen to the people who are on that battlefield waging war against God. It's kind of horrific. It's kind of horrific. People think that Christ is coming back as some peace-loving hippie. No, actually, he's coming back to utterly destroy his enemies in the most horrific way possible. So yeah, you don't want to be an enemy of God. And unfortunately, as I said many, many times before, some people have to learn their lesson the hard way. And the nation of Iran is finding that out right now. So come check this out. Keep an eye on this story, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of the 511 Show. Adios, goodbye, and I'll see you later.